Oh, just lost my holder. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Today, I don't even want to say what today's daf is. I'm not even sure. Ches has something, but we left off in Vav and Beis. After a 3-day hiatus. We can't do it in person over Chol Moed, which we've done, or Yantif, which we've done in the past. So we'll just continue from here. So we left off in Vav and Beis, the Mishnah on top. So it says the Mishnah, Meiser Shkalim Chulin. So we say the leftover shkalim, a person puts money aside, so the leftover money doesn't all become consecrated and has to go to the Beis Hamikdash because he only has to pay a fixed amount. So the leftover goes chulin. Meiser Sir Seifa, the leftover, the tenth of an ephah, which is a carbon. There's two basically types of mincha offerings. One is brought by a person who brings a mincha offering, a minchas chayte, or perhaps it could be referring to the minchas chavitin, or the mincha that a kohen brings, or a kohen gadol. So I have to soon see what that is. But when it comes to meiser asir se'efa, meiser kinei zavim, kinei zavas, kinei yolodos, also the leftover money, right? Person put out money aside to purchase 2 birds, whether he was a zav, or a woman, he had some sort of seminal drip, or a zava, or a woman who had who bled 3 days in a row during your Yimei Ziva, or a woman who gave birth, or a chatas v'ashamos, a person set aside money for a chatas or an asham, moisarin nedava. The leftover goes as a nedava. In other words, it doesn't become chulin, unconsecrated. You can't just put it back in your pocket. Rather, that money goes to the special nedava fund, special fund. When we say ma'aser nedava, goes to the nedava, meaning it goes to the Beis Hamikdash, which is used to when the mizbeach is idle to offer olos. So Zeh Klal is the rule. Kol shubal l'shem chatas m'shem hashama ma'aser nedava. Anything that comes because it came for a chatas or a neshama or some sort of obligation, then the leftover is a nedava. And ma'aser oila la'oila, a left person put a money aside for an ola, so the leftover becomes the money goes for an ola. Ma'aser mincha l'mincha, ma'aser shlam l'shlamim. And same too, so too, person left over for a mincha offering, it can only be used for a mincha, and leftover shlamim for a shlamim. And Mosar Pesach, we actually saw this in the previous Masechta. So the leftover money for Karban Pesach goes to the shlamim, because the Pesach is really a type of a shlamim. We'll soon see and get a little bit into that. So leftover goes as a shlamim. Ma'aser Nazirim, the Nazirim. Leftover money, person wants to go ahead and set aside money for, let's say, poor Nazirim. So the money goes also in the future to use for other Nazirim. Person was a Nazir at the end of their Naziros, a Karbanos Abrat, and Ma'aser Nazir l'Nedava. However, if it was for a specific Nazir, that leftover money goes as an Nedava. So Amar, Rabbi Yosi Zak, the Gemara, Ad the Onataman Shemidikol Rabbi Yehuda Shel Lishmo. So he says, well, when I was over there, so I heard Rabbi Yehuda asked Shmuel, he says, he for shiklo meis, the person goes ahead and sets aside money for machzis shekel, and then he dies. So what happens with that money? No, so we're not talking about extra money, but he sets money aside, but he died, so the person is dead, doesn't have to give. So what happens? Amarle, you pull a nedava. That money falls as a nedava. That goes as a nedava because that money was set aside for an obligation. So therefore, that money goes as a nedava. Then the Mishnah said, Meiser has asir seifa shalom. So what about the extra money, the 10th of an ephah, right, which is a measurement amount of flour? So shalom. So what about if there's money extra? Let's say for the serious ephah, which is brought every day by the kohen gadol. So what happens with that money? So Rabbi Yochanan Amar yolichin liyam melech, right? You can't use it for anything, right? You can't use it for anything. You can't use it for tomatoes. You can't use it for anything. So that money is left, you throw it in the Yam HaMelech, it can't be used for anything, and Rabbi Lazar Amar, you pull in a little dove, right? By the way, anything that we say, normally an animal that is left to die, so because an animal can die, money doesn't die, the equivalent of money, which is quote unquote left to die, is they throw it in the Yam HaMelech, right? And then the saltiness, whatever it is, basically destroys the coin. So you look on Melech and Rabbi Lazar Amar, you pull in a dava. No, that money is already hektish, is sanctified, therefore it can't go back, that can be used for a dava. So Masnisin Pligat Rabbi Yochanan. So our Mishnah appears to be a contradiction of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that you throw the money liyam HaMelech. Why? Our Mishnah says Meiser Shkalim Mechulin. So our Mishnah started off saying Meiser Shkalim Mechulin. It says Meiser Asir Sa'efa, Meiser Kini Zavim, Kini Zavas. Doesn't include here, but also Yolados. right? Meiser Kina Yelados. What's the Meiser there, right? Which doesn't have it in the Mishnah, right? That's included, right? It just says Kina Yelados in the Mishnah over here. It includes the word Meiser, fine. So Meiser Kina Yelados, Chatas Veshamos Musana Adava. So their leftover goes in a double. It doesn't say Liyam Melech, it says equal in a double. So my Rabbi Yechon, so how Rabbi Yechon answer it? So he says, Pasulay, he explained it, Meiser Asir Seifa, Shel Mincha, Chayta, Shel Kol Yisrael. Our Mishnah is talking about that which a person sins, right? And he can't afford, so he brings a flour offering. So that flour offering, right? If it's left over from that, that's the money that our Mishnah is talking about. That it falls to the Nedava fund, as opposed to extra money that Kohen Gadol put aside for his daily offering. That is Yipol Yamamelech, Yolichem Yamamelech, according to Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Yossi Omar Alda Adil Abba Barba. So on this, Abba Barba, he asks, Dinun Amrin, they say over there, Minayin Shah Pesach Mishtana L'Shem Shlamim. From where do we know that a leftover Pesach goes as a Shlamim? That we saw earlier in Maseches Pesachim, right? We spent many blot on this. We discussed actually when it comes to Korban Pesach, there's two things that basically have to happen. You have to have the intentions to bring your Korban Pesach on the proper time, right? So I just said it both together, right? You have to do it l'shem Pesach and also during the proper time. If one of those are off, then it's no good. Okay. In other words, if I bring it on the 14th of Nisan, but for a shlamim, it's no good. Or if I bring it on, let's say the 10th of Nisan for a Pesach, it's no good. But if I bring it on the 10th of Nisan, which is too early, and I do it l'shem shlamim, that could be okay, right? So that's a little background, which we saw in Maseches Pesachim. So now, back in the case. So Minayin Shah Pesach Mishtana L'Shem Shlamim. How do we know that Korban Pesach changes to L'Shem Shlamim? Tamalor, the pasuk says, V'Imin Atzon Karbono Zevach Shlamim. It says it's sown. If it's from his flock, then his Karbono Zevach Shlamim. So Kol Shumin Atzon Bo Shlamim. So anything which comes from, has to come from sown, comes to Shlamim. And what is it talking about? So in other words, according to this, so yes, I see boom. I understand. Every korban, right? So you're saying that this, because the korban pesach comes from sown, right? So it becomes a shlamim, right? So what an olah comes from sown, right? Why doesn't that become a shlamim, right? If you do it for the if you do it for an olah, right? Maybe it should work as an olah, right? So why do we say that the leftover money for korban pesach becomes a shlamim? What about an olah, right? Olah is the same thing. Maybe leftover money from an olah should become a shlamim. So my answer is no. Davar she'ein haba ela min hatzon yatsa olah she'iba afilu min habakar. So he says no, that's different because we're only talking about something that comes from tzon, right? Something which specifically comes from tzon. Those leftovers become a shlamim. However, an olah, which can come from tzon, it can also come from bakar, also cattle, right? You can't bring a calf as your korban pesach. So therefore, that is excluded. Sivon, but he asks, Hari Asham. What about an Asham? An Asham cannot use a cattle. You can't use a calf or some sort of cow, right? Animal from the cow family. So Rabbi Boon Bar Kahana min hatzon. It says min hatzon from the tzon. Davashu ba mikol tzon. Something comes from all types of flocking animals. So Yatza Asham she'ein ba ela min hakvasi bilvad. Right, that would exclude an Asham, which only comes from a sheep. But when it comes to Korban Pesach, can come from sheep or goats. Those are both considered to be flocking animals. Those are both sown, right? Sown is broken down, right? There's two categories of flocking animals, goat and sheep. So goat and sheep is used for a Korban Pesach, but only a sheep, right, is used for an Asham. And Bechol, go understand. So Bechol Aser at Amar Min Lamait, V'Kan Mar Min L'Rabbos. I understand. In all places, the word "min" from usually means to exclude, and over here you're coming to include, right? Min Hatzon coming to include, right, goats and sheep. So what is it? So everybody no. How can I mean Lamait? No, the min also comes to go exclude here. Well, how? Miuchain ba ben shtei shanim. Miuchain ba lenakeva. So it says no. We have exclusions when it comes to Korban Pesach. It can't be an animal in the second year. It can't be a female. So those are both exclusions when it comes to the type of sown that's brought for your Korban Pesach. The Gavi Asham Nami mean Lamayitu. And even by the Asham, also the word mean, it comes to exclude. She'ein haba ela mean kvasim bilvad. Also the word mean, also by an Asham, also comes to exclude. It excludes any other animal besides a sheep. So he still asked, I voksiv im min hatson karbana min akvasim min izem laola. Right? So we have another pasuk that says it's from tzon, or keves or izim, right, which is clearly talking about Korban Pesach, because Korban Pesach is brought from both kvasim and izim, and it says la'olah. So miyata ma'aser Pesach v'aliolah. So maybe we should say that the extra, any overage, any extra money, right, or leftover should be used as an olah. So Rabbi Avram. So Mishan Davashu Lachila, Davashu Achila, Mishan Davashu Lachila, Davashena Achila. Okay, so we have two psukim. We have an olah and shlama. So which one do we compare it to? Let's compare something which is eaten to something which is eaten. Korban Pesach is eaten. A shlamim is eaten by it, right? It is also eaten. But an olah gets completely consumed on the mizbeach. Therefore, we'll say it becomes a shlamim, not an olah. Or, and Rabbi Yasi, Rabbi Boon, Mishani kachim kalim l'shem kachim kalim. Mishani kachim kalim l'shem kachim kachim. So it says we also know there's two different types of categories of karbanos. Some are more severe than others in terms of where they can be eaten, how they can be offered. One is the category of kachim kalim, which is more right mekel, right? That shlamim is included in there, a toda and a Korban Pesach. So Korban Pesach is kachim kalim, and olah is kachim kachim. Therefore, let's compare Korban Pesach to a shlamim, which is because both of them are kachim kalim, versus Korban Pesach, which become an olah. Rabbi Yechon Amar Alda Rabbi Chanina. He says on this. Rabbi Yechon said on this. Rabbi Chanina asked. He says Dinu Namrin. They say in a Pesach Mishtan l'shem shlamim. Eli Gein Shachal l'shem shlamim. That Korban Pesach can only it only become a Korban Pesach if you a Korban Pesach can only become a shlamim if you do it at the wrong time l'shem shlamim. I say even if you shech a Korban Pesach a month early, the l'shem olah, it's still kosher as a shlamim, right? So he says, Amar Rebbe Yula, so Talmud Rabbi Yechon, what's the reason kosher? Kosher zevach b'shlamim. Anything, right, that is offered, even l'shem as an olah, according to Rabbi Yechon, that could come as a shlamim. Hey Avida. So what's the case, right, of where he shechs it, right? In other words, with a bad machshava. Hey Avida. So shachto shem ola almanas lizrog double lamachar. So if he goes ahead and he shechs it for, if he takes a case of an if he takes the animal, right, for in order to go ahead and he does it for an olah, and then he also, not only that, he has a puzzle type of intention, i.e., to go ahead and throw the blood tomorrow, right? So if he does that, shem olah, almanasli zog don lemachar. So Gemara says mikol makom puzzle. Well, that should be puzzle, right? That should be puzzle in this case, even if he does it as a shlamim. So the Gemara says that ein tomar mishtan lemachshava is puzzle. Says yeah, if you say that it is for a machshava puzzle, then it is puzzle. And however, if you say that tamar ein mishtan lemachshava is puzzle, then pigel. But if you say that the machshava of an olah doesn't puzzle it, well, then it's pigel. Because remember, if the machshava for the wrong animal, right, on this Pesach, right, is for an olah, so then that's one wrong, right? And the second wrong is he wants to do the zrika at a later date, right? Which we know is pigel, right? But you can't have pigel if there's two wrongs, right? There's Allah, we saw a little bit in Psachim, we've seen it also in Zvachim, right? So if he has two wrong intentions, it's an olah, and the throw at the wrong time, then that's puzzle. However, if he just goes ahead and thinks it's an, you hold that to think that it's an olah is not a problem, so then his only bad thing that he did is that he had to go ahead and do the zrika liachar sman. So therefore, that would be considered to be pigel. Now, lishmo b'shelo lishmo b'shari mos hasham. Let's say a person, right, shech this Korban Pesach, and he did it. He took it a month early, right? And when he did the shechita, he did the Shem Pesach. And when he did the other part, when he did the zrika, then he did it shelo lishma. So first he started off lishmo, right? And then he did shelo lishma. So during the rest of the year. So Rabbi Boon bar Chia b'shem Shmuel bar Abba says no. He says Mikevan Shamar shelo lishmo, right? Once he says shelo lishma, and he's doing it as a shlamim, it's as if the first part, right? As if the first part, even though he was
Yo, we lost you. Yo.
I'm back. Am I back?
You're back.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. It's almost the end of the difficult sugya. Then it gets a little easier. So we gotta get through this. We're climbing the mountain here. So the halach is right. If a person checks a shlamim, all right, if a person takes a Karan Pesach, the shame Karan Pesach a month early, it's no good. If a person takes a Karan Pesach, takes it a month early, does it as a shlamim, it's okay. So over here, since he goes ahead and he sprinkles the blood as a shlamim, we'll say it's like he did the shechita also as a shlamim, and therefore v'hu kasher. So he said, if that's the case, im kenu, afilu shachtu lishmo almanas lizok dama shalal lishmo, that even if he says, right, he's going to shecht it, right, that for the case of a Karan Pesach, on the condition, right, to throw the blood. Now he wasn't just quiet. He says, I'm going to go ahead and shecht it for a Karan Pesach, and then afterwards he says, okay, I'm going to throw the blood for a shlamim. So let's say that his man will say that, hey, since at the end I said I'm going to do the zrika l'shem shlamim, it should all be shem shlamim. So on that he says, no, I'm a Rabbi Abba Mari. So he says, no, minalan kashtika kosher, dum shtika puzzle. Maybe in the case of a shtika, it's kosher, right? But if he does it, the shtika and puzzle, but if he, in other words, if you have the case, right, that maybe it's only the case of the shtika where it works, but a case of where he actually says it, right, where he says it's going to go ahead, maybe that would not go help, and we can't override that shchita for the sake of the second part. In other words, maybe we only override the beginning part if that was done by shtika, but if it's done through saying it, then that would not be a kosher korban. Fine, that was the end of the difficult sugya for the day. Now we can move on. Ma'aser nazir and daf. So he said, the leftover nazir, the leftover funds for a nazir goes to a nadava that we said was for a specific nazir. And Rav Chizda, turn the page, Amar, he says, "V'hu shekar b'chadas b'seifu." That's only if the nazir brings a couple of offerings. He says, that's only if the chatas was left over. Then the leftover money, just like any other chatas, right? You have extra money for. So too over here, the money goes there. Avali karvo shlamim b'sof. But let's say he left over a shlamim at the end. So Mr. and shlamim, the leftover goes as a shlamim, doesn't go as a nadava. And Amar Rabbi Zira, and it says on this Rabbi Zira, afilu karvu shlamim l'sof. No, even if he had leftover, he offered the chatas and he only has a shlamim left, and his leftover money. Halach achasi benazir shtei mataris l'nadav. Halach l'mosh misin, and the money gets left over as a nadava. And masnisam asayla l'denu, masnisam asayla l'denu. We actually have a brisa, one that supports each way. One that even if it's a shlamim, that the money goes as a nadava, and the other has no. If it's leftover, if it's a shlamim, then the leftover goes as a shlamim. We have one that supports Rabbi Zera. It says Elu Hein Mos Stumin. These are considered to be unspecified funds, which the money goes as an adava. Kol shedmei chatas, moravas behen. If the money of a chatas is mixed up with them, the afilu hifrish demei chatas mitoicha Mos Stumin. All right, even if he goes ahead and he has a chatas from them, so therefore it's all Mos Stumin. It's unspecified, and therefore it all goes to nadava. And Rav Chizda, and then we have Brisa who supports Rav Chizda, who is quoted at the bottom of Vav and Beis, and he was the one who says, "Elu chatasi v'ashar l'shar nezirasi." He says, "This money is for my chatas, and the rest is for my other nazirus korbanos." Umeis, and he dies. Ma'olim b'kulan, all of them is meila, right? They ma'olim miktasan, right? And there is meila by them, but only if you use all the money, because there is no meila by the shlamim money. There's only meila by the chatas money. So the ein moalim b'miksasan v'lo amar imesi polon adava, and therefore, because only if it's all the money, if you have the chatas mixed in there, but if there's no more chatas funds left, i.e., he already offered the chatas, he just has the shlamim left. Therefore, there would be no meila. Therefore, the money doesn't go as an adava. Therefore, that extra money would go towards a shlamim. Chiz Omar ma'aser lachma shel nazir yurkat. Leftover money for a nazir, right? That part of the nazir he brings breads like similar to a toda. So that money. Right, Ma'aser Lachmo, or the leftover bread should go ahead and basically go bad, right? Let it go ahead and you can't go ahead and consume or use it for something else. Right? It's true. So what you do with it? If you go ahead, you offer the bread. There's no such thing as just a bread offering. If you wanted to say, okay, let's use these breads for another nazir, you can't do that either. Right? You can't do it because then that will be part of this one, and you don't have nazirs that comes without bread, right? So therefore, that nazir, whoever that nazir is, he can't just use bread that was already consecrated for nazir A, because nazir B has to bring his own bread. So therefore, you can't use that bread. Therefore, you have to say, therefore, you have to say the leftover bread has to go ahead and yurkav and rat. And Sabrin, the Maimar, they thought to say, hu lachma hu moisin nechasa, right? The same halacha by bread is also any leftover nesachim, any leftover wine. So Rabbi Yasi, Bone, Maisar nesachav, kadshe inun, v'yipol nedava. He says, no, the leftover nechasim are kachim, and those go nedava. Like that money is used for an nedava, that's used for the nedava fund, and it's not just going. You don't let it go bad like that of the lechem of the nazir. Now, da'ate de Rabbi Yasi berebun, and that which we says Shmuel, Rav Chisda, the Rabbi Shloisha Amar Davarechas. So he says Shmuel, Rav Chisda, and Rabbi. They said three of them said the same thing, right? The leftover basically goes as a nedava. Rav Chisda hadamran. Rav Chisda, that which you just said, that the leftover of the nesachim go as an adava. And Shmuel don Rabbi Yasi, and Shmuel says, and that which Rabbi Yasi says, Adana Taman Shmita called Rabbi Huda Shal Shmuel. When he asked the case of Hifri Shiklo Mace, a person set aside money as his shekel and he dies, and over there, Amarle, you pull an adava. That money goes as an adava. So that money, right, is used for a adava. So that money is, once again, that money is left over as an adava. And Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Elazar says, Meiser Asir Seifa Shalom. The leftover Asir Seifa goes to him, and Rabbi Yechon Amar Yechon Melech. And Rabbi Elazar Amar Yipol an Adava. Rabbi Elazar says that goes in Adava. So we see that the leftover Asir Seifa, right, goes to an Adava. Once again, that money is considered to be kachim, and therefore, just like Rav Chisda and just like Rabbi, that money goes as kachim, and therefore, since that money is kachim, therefore the halach is Yipolu lin Adava. It goes as an Adava. Fine. Next Mishnah. By the way, today's goal is to get to the Mishnah on the bottom of, or to finish the parak. That's today's goal. Anybody has to get off early. We're going to finish the parak in the bottom of Zayin Amud Beis. So Meiser Shvuyim l'Shvuyim, any leftover money that was used for a ransom, right? That money goes to ransom other captives. Meiser Shvuyi, however, if money is for a specific person, for his, right, money was collected to go ahead for his ransom, Loisa Shvuyi. That money goes to him. In other words, the leftover goes to him. He gets to keep it, right? Start his life. Meiser anim la'anim, leftover money collected for poor people go to poor people. Meiser ani, but as for a specific ani, then the meiser ani goes to that specific poor person. Meiser amesim la'mesim, money collected for chever kadisha or for to help the burial costs. Chesed shalemes, that money goes to the dead. And meiser hameis. But if money is specific for a specific person, and then he, obviously he dies, and the burial funds, and there's extra money collected, the Yarshav, then it goes to his inheritors. No. No, it doesn't go to them. It was made for him, right? So therefore, that left Eliyahu Navi and Rabbi Nassan Amar. He says, no, go ahead and you build a very nice monument or dome or a gravesite stone in order of his at his burial site. Fine, that was the Mishnah. Zok the Gemara. So if they went ahead and they collected for a person who died and they assumed he had no money, but turns out he was a very wealthy man. Rabbi Yirmiyah, he holds the Yarshav. That is the case of where the leftover money goes to his inheritors, right, and therefore it goes to his sons. So Amarle Rabbi Ad the Chushas, Gi Atzmacha. Like even a late, I understand it. Why would you say this, right? They only intended for the money to go him and to help his burial costs, and now you're saying the money goes to his Yarshim. So Amarle Anu Amarti Atzminan Lach, right? I never said it, right? I was just sort of thinking out loud, but how you Rabbi how do you know that halacha is not that way exactly? So Tani b'shem Rab Nasan, Meiser hameis yibarala nefesh al kivro v'yasala zivil al gavimitaso. Right, the leftover money collected for a person who died. Go ahead and build him a nice monument, a nice stone, a nice whatever, tombstone or whatever by his grave. And even, for the purposes at his burial or out, go ahead and sprinkle wine. It's also an expense. Sprinkle wine so it smells nice, a nice fragrance at his burial site. Basically, spend the money on the dead, and the money does not go to the Yerusha. And Tani, in Paidin Shavui v'Shavui, you don't go ahead and redeem a captive from money is collected from a specific shavui, person who was held captive. Then go even talis batalis. Also, if you go ahead to collect money to buy a certain person clothes, you can't use that money for somebody else. However, we don't do a mach. We don't go ahead and protest if the people collecting the funds actually redirect that money for somebody else. We don't stop them. And Tani, right? We don't go ahead and make large monuments, right, for the tzaddikim, for the burial of the tzaddikim. Why is that? Their words are their monuments. So you want to remember them. It's not by the size of the monument where they're buried. It's their words and their teachings. Now comes one of the few agadatas in the Masechta. Rabbi Yochanan Havi Mismach v'Ozil al Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So Rabbi Yochanan was walking and he was leaning upon on Rabbi Chia bar Abba. I guess he was helping him walk. Rabbi Eliezer Chamile u'Matamer Mikmei, and Rabbi Eliezer, he saw him and then he hid from him. So Rabbi Eliezer saw Rabbi Yochanan, who was older, right, and he basically hid from him. Valmar, and he said, right, this Babylonian Rabbi Eliezer has done two things against me. Right. Chada, first of all, the Lashav Shlomei, the Mitmar. First of all, this is number one, right? He doesn't say hello. He hides from me. Right. This is all one. Right. He does that to me. It's very offensive. He's not acting properly. So says Samarle. Samarle Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi. So says Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi. Kol nigan gavohin. Deziri lo yishal b'shlomei derabe. Right. Says, but this is what we do in Bavel, right? The young people don't have the audacity to come up to the older people, right, and say Shalom Aleichem to him, because we basically go ahead and do the pasuk. The pasuk says, Ra'uni na'arim v'nechbo v'yeshishim kamu amadu. So it says the young people, they see me and they hide, and the old people stand up. So you see that the young people are hiding. However, he wasn't satisfied with that. So Amar Lei, Samal Liavid. So he said, Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi said, so he saw that this teretz was not good for him. So he said, what's the halacha, right? If we were walking by and we saw a certain idol, the Adura idol, what would we do? Right? So he says, I understand, if we're walking by this idol, why would you care? Right? Basically, we would walk by without doing anything, or blinded in its eyes. We would walk by it. So Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi says, basically, this is what would have happened to you. You're saying that you would just walk by something and ignore it. So the reason why he hid, right, and didn't say hello to you is because their minhag is not to say hello, and therefore, if he would have just walked by you, he basically would have been treating you like an idol. So he was pacified with that. And now, what was the other thing that bothered him? Certain, and also another thing that what did this Rabbi Yochanan do? Rabbi Elazar do? Eliezer, because he never said. When he quotes me, he never quotes. Says Rabbi Yochanan said he never quotes me when he says my teachings. He doesn't quote in my name. So Nichnas of Rabbi Ami Rabasi came to Amrlos. It says Rabbi Kachaya Ma'aseh Knesset Shel Tarsim. Right? Didn't this not occur in the shul of the Tarsim? Right? The workers, the copper workers. Right? So Benagar Sheyesh Brosha Glustra. There's a machlokes as by the case of whether one can fasten a bolt on Shabbos. Right? Shenechlechu. There's a machlokes over there. And Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, and Ad Shekar Sefer Torah v'Chamasan, and they were arguing. And therefore, through their argument, the Sefer Torah was born. So it was torn. They didn't tear it, right, from anger. Rather, it was torn. But they were arguing. So therefore, it was done. They didn't do it on purpose, right? So, and he says, "V'hayasham zaken echad," and he says, and there was a zaken of there, Rabbi Yasi ben Kisma Shemo, and he says, "Amar Timani im loy base vodazar," and he says, I won't be surprised if in the future, because they were fighting over this and the Sefer Torah was torn, I won't be surprised if the shul was destroyed. So basically, this is the mice that they said to him to try to sort of get Rabbi Yechanan's mind off the fact that Rabbi Eliezer wouldn't quote him, but he still wasn't pleased. V'chazar v'amar hechti mechaver. And now you want to go ahead and have tainas against him for not quoting you, right? This is not how we do. We don't fight, so maybe don't be mad at him, right? We see because fighting leads to destruction, leads to base of Vodazara. However, Nichnas the fun of Rabbi Yaakov Eidi, once again, Rabbi Yaakov Eidi came to appease his Rabbi Yochanan. So Amar Lei, he says, "Ksiv kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe Abdo Kain tziva Moshe es Yeshua." Just like Hashem commanded Moshe taught over to Yeshua. Right? Everything that Yeshua taught, he said, this is what Moshe said, this is what Moshe said. Rather, he sat there and taught, and everybody knew that whatever Yeshua taught was taught by Moshe. So too, Rabbi Eliezer, he teaches, and everyone knows everything Rabbi Eliezer teaches, he knows from you, Rabbi Yochanan. So hearing this, so Rabbi Yochanan turned to Rabbi Amir Ravasi. Says, right? How come you guys don't know how to appease, just as well as Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi? Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan, why did he want him to quote him so badly? What was the big deal? Okay, quote him, don't quote him, right? He wanted credit. The David Melech, we see, he was Mevakish Rachim Shinamar. It says over there, Agura Ba'olecha Olamim Echse B'Seisa Knevecha Sela. So he says over there, I want to live in your tent, in your house forever. What, did the Melech think he was going to live forever? Of course not. Ella, let my name be said in the Bati Midrashos and in Shuls and the base Medrashes forever, right? I know I might die, but let my words continue on. And Shmuel ben Azar b'Shem Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, Kol Talmid Chacham Shayim Davar Halacha Mipiv Be'olam Hazeh Sfasav Rakshas Imo Bekever. Any halacha that's quoted in the name of Talmid Chacham, so his lips will go ahead and move with him in the graves. Shnamar, as the pasuk says, V'chikecha Kiyayin Hatov. Let your palate be like good wine. Doivev Sise Yishan. Right. So moving the lips when they sleep. So what's the connection? What, just like when it comes to a vat of wine, if a person touches it, so too all the wine moves around. Right. So too when it comes to the lips of tzaddikim, once you say adavar halacha in their name, then their lips move. So who cares? Why do they want their lips to move, right, in their death? So right, one of being like a person who drinks konditon, or drinks good wine. This is, I guess, a pleasure or hana to the mace. And alpha the shasile tama v'fume. And even though one drinks it, nevertheless the taste remains in the palate, remains in the lips. Rav Gidol says, one who goes ahead and says the Maimra in the name of somebody else, the person envisions that person in front of him. Shinamar, as the pasuk says, right? Only with an image, right? But selim with an image, right? Does a person walk? So when he quotes him, then he also imagines the person. See, the pasuk says, Rav Adam Yikra Ish Chazdo. It says over there, Rav Adam, right? A great man will call out, will teach out Ish Chasdo, will teach his chesed. Says that Shak Adam. This is other people. The Ish Amunim Mi Matzeh. However, a person who's Amunim, whose belief, right, Mi and Matzeh will find. Says that Rabbi Zeir. That's Rabbi Zeir. Dam Rabbi Zeir. Lisnein Tzrichen Chashin L'Shmaitz the Rav Sheshes. Who Gava Mefachba, right? That even when he would learn from Rav Sheshes, who was blind, who couldn't see his teacher, nevertheless he knew that Rav Sheshes was somebody who knew exactly. You didn't have to go ahead and second guess that which he was teaching, that he had a Masorah from his Rebbe. And Amar Rav Zeir, the Ravasi says, Rav Zeir to Ravasi, Chachim Rabbi Levar Pasya. He says, Do you know, right, Bar Pasia, that you can quote him in his name, right? Have you ever met Bar Pasia? So Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei. No, Rabbi Yochanan said it. Rabbi Yochanan said it. It's like therefore I know that this is exactly what I said, and therefore I can quote him, even though I didn't quote Rabbi Yochanan in Bar Pasia's name. And once again, Rabbi Rabasi said, Rabasi Chacham Rebbe LeRav. Do you know? Have you ever met Rav? That you're saying in the name of Rav. So that's Shmaitz Mishmei that you're saying Allah in his name. So Amalei Ravad Barava Amram Mishmei. Ravad Barava said his name, and therefore, since I heard from him, therefore I know it's exactly as Rav said. And Ein Dorsh Ein Bel is not a generation that does not have late son. People who go ahead are late sons who mock the Dorsh of David as the generation of David and Melech. Why? What do they do? They used to go out by the window of David and say, he said, David, when will the Beis Hamikdash be built? Right? They knew David and Melech couldn't build it. He had to wait for Shlomo, so they basically had to wait for David to die. So it says, when will the Beis Hamikdash be built?
He's so close.
Yo, we lost you again.
Now I want to know when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built.
You're almost there.
And he stopped us right when we found out.
Wait a minute.
You were going to tell us.
Unmute.
All right, I'm unmuted. Sorry about that. It says, right? They said, we won't be able to go to the house, Hashem's house. They try to anger me. Right? Now, bring evil upon me if I'm not really happy with the words. Why? He was happy when they said, we want to go to Hashem's house, i.e. David dropped dead. We want the Beis Hamikdash. Right? Because at the end, he'll be with his days. I'm going to give you full days. I'm not going to, shorten your days that you'll die early to the Beis Hamikdash. Why? Right? What's the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash? To bring the Karbanos Tzibur, right? So why was he so happy, right? Because that your maisim, right? Your maisim, those deeds and your mishpat that you're doing is on a level or even better than the Karbanos of the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, the Beis Hamikdash is not needed yet while you're still alive. There's no rush to get rid of you, David HaMelech, because we still have your tzedakah and your mishpat. That is more precious to me than a korban. Shnamar, as the pasuk says, tzedakah mishpat nivchar shel mizbeach. Hashem, the one who does tzedakah and mishpat, is choicier than that of a korban on a mizbeach. So hajolach metzarfin shkalim. So now we finished the second parak. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we will do the third parak. We'll bring in the third parak. Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow at 7:15. Same.